Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris and welcome to a brand new episode of Bionicle Fanon Reviews, the show where I review some of the canon and non-canon Bionicle models that I find particularly interesting, or in this case, have won a Duck Bricks Fanon contest. So a couple of months ago, I hosted the Bionicle Fanon contest for the Dinosaurs of Bota Magna. This was the second contest we ever did, and we got so many entries in, particularly so many large category entries, that I couldn't just review one of the winners. Oh no, because today we will be reviewing one of the many different finalists of the Dinosaurs of Bota Magna Fanon contest. If you look over there, this is a life-size version of the model that we are reviewing today. I am incredibly excited to showcase this to all of you because it has been a lot of months in the making. Many brickling orders were involved in terms of getting that fully built. I have a massive box of dinosaur parts that I have been building off of, and there are so many dinos we have yet to cover. And so, let's, without further ado, jump right into this particular build. I want to start off this review by making a pretty bold statement, and I do not make this lightly. This model, the Yuxisaurus Rex by Magna, may be the most technically impressive and complex model I have ever built out of any LEGO creation. And I build a lot of LEGO, and that really goes to show, and you can probably expect, the kind of model that this is and what we will be discussing in this review. I think out of all of the contest entries, and absolutely no flack against any of the other ones, I have been so impressed with all of the other entries, and they are all amazing in their own way. This has just been the most technically complex. It was a joy to build and see how it came together, and really is a feat of engineering, unlike any other model that I have actually had the pleasure of building. I have compared this against some of the largest LEGO Technic supercars, with a lot of very complex gears and whatnot going into it. And this is just a completely different level. There is so much going on here, so much stuff that is factored into the overall build and the way that things fit together, and the way that armor plating sits on the model itself, that I am just completely blown away and very impressed by the overall design of this particular build itself. So what's the deal with this? This is the Yuxisaurus Rex by Magna. It was a finalist in our Dinosaurs of Bota Magna contest, which we ran over the past summer of 2022. We had so many different finalists. This was one out of 12 finalists, and unfortunately, this entry was only represented by a render of the model. Now, I will have to say that this is probably one of the most expensive entries to make ever. I certainly have spent the most money on trying to put this together than I have on any other contest winner, probably any other mock as well, because dark blue is a pretty expensive color. So it is nearly impossible to build this in real life. I had to make a few compromises, such as just simply 3D printing pieces that I just wasn't able to obtain very easily. Like there's kind of a dark blue piece up there that's printed. So like a couple of pieces printed in there that are 3D printed as well. But for the most part, this is really just using official LEGO pieces. Everything can be made based on its design, based on the actual original LEGO parts. I also had to 3D print these in silver and whatnot. But for the most part, you can really make this for real life. Now, what's really fantastic is that the mock-up designer, Jax, actually was able to make not only a studio model for this, but he also made full instructions. And let me tell you, it would have been literally impossible for me to make this without instructions. So I'm very thankful for that. I messaged him and I was like, hey, I really want to make this. I cannot make it without instructions. It is way too complex for me. So we put together actual step-by-step instructions, which were very easy to follow, which was absolutely fantastic. And we'll talk about the build process later. But first, it's time for articulation. So I want to start off with the legs. You see those pistons there? Those are not for show. Those actually all work. And I think that is my favorite part about this model, where you can splay the legs outwards, where you can see the pistons are moving like so, but then you can also rotate it, and all of it actually functions and moves around based on the pistons. Let me just try to get a good grip on this. My finger accidentally knocked off something on the side here because I wasn't really holding it correctly, but look at this. Oh my god. Look at that motion. Oh my goodness. That is just so cool to me how you can actually have this be rotating, and this is a lot of friction. I mean, I think I could sit on this model and have it not break, because this is just so much to move around. It is very impressive, because not only, let's zoom in here, not only do you have the pistons that are all mounted on their own individual ball joints internally that help the friction of this, but there are 4 sets of friction little gears actually added on to the way that this is mounted around a massive gear hub that allows you to have a massive amount of friction. I'm putting a lot of effort into turning this, but it is just so satisfying to see these turns. Zooming out here, just look at the motion of these pistons as they move. That is just so cool to me, just simply moving the legs. If I can be this stunned by the legs themselves moving, you bet you're in for a treat for the rest of this model. So as you can see, the model is very sturdy, but that doesn't mean it's not able to articulate, because in addition to being able to splay the legs back and forth to a pretty significant degree and move them back and forth as well, you also have a joint here, so you can move this here based on 2 different ratchet joints, so this just clicks back and forth like so. Whoops, one of the system pieces came off here. That's a pretty minor thing. There are some things that do fall off, not because it's fragile, it's not fragile at all, but because it's like so hard, like it has so much friction that I end up kind of knocking stuff off when I grip it. So you can see here, that is able to move on that point. You also have this joint here, so, oh, there we go, accidentally separated, the bar just isn't quite long enough, but this also moves here, so that is very cool to see, this whole thing actually being able to move on a ratchet joint for the foot articulation itself, which is very nice. And then you have the foot itself being able to be rotated back and forth. Now again, there are some Technic bushings that will kind of fall off and tend to kind of pop out just because of the way that it's set up. This is just such a large and gargantuan creature that it's kind of impossible to not have the smallest size of Technic bushings fall out. It doesn't mean it's not stable, it just means there's just a little bit of flex going on because there's so many different mechanisms and stuff happening here that as you move it, things will tend to kind of just push a little bit outwards, but it's not a big deal. Not a lot of things fall out. I mean, it's super easy to tell where they go. And then of course, you actually have everything being associated with these friction joints from the Bionicle Titans line. So this, of course, is fully frictioned up for the legs here, and then the legs and feet themselves can move back and forth. There is a bit of a sway when you do this, and as you can see, it does tend to kind of cause these to fall out, which is a little bit annoying. My parts also are pretty old, so that could be a part of it. But overall, you have a very, very impressive amount of articulation being used here, and it is very, very sturdy. I think this is probably one of the sturdiest large-scale contest winners out of all of the other entries, where it only has 2 legs, but man, it's not gonna fall over. It is absolutely just going to stay right in place, even bending kind of the foot here to really kind of make it in extreme poses. Everything is staying together, and everything that's done on one leg is replicated to the other side as well. So you have just a massive amount of movement here for the limbs itself, where you can really just kind of get the digitigrade legs moving like this. You also have them, of course, moving on this point as well, so you've got different ratchet points for the feet. Everything just comes together in such an impressive manner that, again, just completely blown away by the sheer amount of engineering that went into designing this model and went into actually making it stable and playable. It is very easy. Well, okay, it's not easy. It is a lot easier to design something like this and make it literally impossible to move, or make it just that it doesn't come together at all. For a lot of digital studio models, as much as I love Studio and the way that it is a great art form for building Bionicle and Lego MOCs, there are a lot of things built in Studio that just simply do not hold up and do not stay together when they're built in person. Not only was this only built digitally, the Mockets did not have any physical way to test whether or not the connections were working. You kind of had to just figure it out based on the computer, but it's also really stable and fully articulatable. That is pretty crazy to me. Oh my goodness, like I am beside myself blown away with the absolute fantastic beast of a model that this is. The tail itself, in comparison, is a lot simpler in the way that it articulates, but it absolutely is still very detailed. You can move it up and down and back and forth like so. The same can be done for this segment of the tail, up and down, back and forth, just super simple in the way that this all attaches, but overall I do like the overall design and look and feel of the model. Do apologize, these are supposed to be dark gray. The dark gray horns only appeared in one single LEGO Movie 2 Ultra Caddy set, so I only had 2 of them, so I had to replace some of them with black ones, but hopefully it's not that big of a deal. Now, of course, as you can see around here, one of my favorite things is that the armor pieces on the side of the model actually can be moved around and articulated. So this is a torso for a Bionicle character. That is straight up a torso. But of course, you can actually have it being used as armor pieces. You've got so many different Technic things, even system pieces underneath it to really kind of armor it up completely. Very, very cool and impressive work. Now moving on to the head, we're still on posability here. It's been 5 minutes and yes, we are still on posability, but the head itself is equally impressive to move around and pivot. Now I'm really impressed by the amount of articulation you can really get out of the head. You can really have it turn its head back and forth. Now some things will fall off if kind of the joints are a little bit kind of loose there in terms of these connections. These gears I noticed tend to fall out a little bit. It's kind of annoying. I think it's just a way that the gears themselves were molded if you just have them attached by the thinnest of connections there. But as you can see, the head is actually adhered to based on a number of different pistons. So if you want to raise the head up and make him look up, those pistons will be fully articulating like so. You can have him be looking down and have those pistons compress. Everything just feels very mechanical to me in the way that this is set up. And of course, the way the pistons work, oh, there goes another gear. Whatever, I'll leave that one off. But you can really just have this being bent all the way around in different configurations just because of the way the overall head model is set up. And again, the head is not going to fall over. Like I'm really tapping it, it's not going to fall over because there's just so many different friction pieces. Because it is a 2009 or 2010 era oriented Bionicle, you also have a Thornrex launcher in its chest there, which is really cool to see because you can really kind of lift the head up and pretend that's kind of a weapon that extends out of the chest that blasts people on the ground, which is very cool. And of course you can also move the jaw. The jaw itself does open and shut, which I think this is a good parts usage going into the parts usages because this piece, the foot here, really does work well in congruence with the rest of the way the head is constructed itself. This is an absolute titan, and I am incredibly impressed with this model. I know I keep saying this, but this is easily one of the most technically complex models I've ever made. And with that, we can move on to building techniques. And of course, I've talked a lot about this when I've been talking about articulation, but I cannot stress enough how impressive it is to be able to not only just sit down and build these with actual bricks, but to sit down and build this on a computer with no physical bricks, hope that all the connections work. Studio, for all the good things about Studio, it's a lot of stuff that makes Studio building really hard. It's really hard to actually get things to connect. It's really hard to make sure things are not clipping into each other. And all the articulation works despite it not even being tested. I mean, that is just very, very impressive to me in particular as a builder, as a Lego builder, as a Bionicle builder, as a Lego mock enthusiast. That is just so, so cool to me. Now, the building techniques, there are many I could call out, but I just do want to call out a couple things. The way that pistons are used in this model, very, very cool how every single piston serves a purpose. I think I can count. Let's practice and count. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 10 on each leg, 2 for the head, so 12. 12 different pistons being used here, and every single one absolutely adds to the articulation of the model. It does not distract from it, they're not just for show, they absolutely do add to the friction and movement of the model itself. Now, of course, you have click hinges being also used in conjunction with the ball joint friction, as well as being used in conjunction with the rest of the piston pieces, and everything just comes together in a very remarkable display for this model itself. Now, what's really cool is that they actually built it such that you can kind of lift these pieces out a little bit, which if you wanted to lift them up, you can actually see the internal mechanisms of it. I won't do it now because it's a bit hard to take apart, but one of my favorite things about the model is just how solid it is. Man, this is really heavy. I can't get this with one hand. You can see in the bottom here that it is a very solid build. It is fully armored up, even from the bottom. We can see maybe some vents on the bottom bars, but for the most part, it is just fully enclosed. You've got some shields on the back here, just kind of closing it up. And what's really impressive is the way that different pieces were used as armor plating, even when we go onto the top. So let me just kind of rotate this here. You can kind of see the top of the model. You have system pieces attached by clips. These are system. You've got other pieces like kind of dark blue Bionicle torso pieces being connected. You've got CCBS being used here. Everything, despite being made out of different materials, be it system or Bionicle G1, G2, CCBS, Technic, everything comes together in a remarkable display here. And it is just so satisfying to just see the model from the top and see the model from all different angles, because it really makes you appreciate the amount of engineering that went into really making sure that this is fully plated up. Now, moving on to the other types of building techniques, one thing that I do want to mention, and we will start to kind of talk about aesthetics when we talk about this particular point as well. is that so much attention to detail was paid into the color scheme and color blocking of this model. It would have been easy to just color everything dark blue and make it a big blue mass and call it good. But there's actually a lot of work being put into actually making sure that the internal details, like some of the kind of pistons that are for show, are all in gold. So for example, you have gold details here, gold here and here, you have gold pistons and wires on the top, which really add to the kind of technology fused with nature vibe of all of the dinosaurs. Obviously the eyes are in gold as well when you actually have the eyeballs. And one of my favorite things about these models, or about this model in particular, is that you can actually see there's just a little bit, just very small highlight colors, not even secondary colors. These are just really tiny pieces of gold that are sprinkled in to really kind of make it feel that the gold is the internal wiring and internal structure of the way that this is constructed. From the gold, you actually have another layer of brown. All of the brown pieces actually connect a lot of the gold. A lot of these pieces here, these are actually supposed to be brown. They're just really expensive to get in brown. I tried to cost optimize this as much as possible, but where you can see where if you look at the feet here, there actually are a lot of brown detailing because that's really what's showing the internal mechanical structure being built around these kind of brown pieces. They did not need to do that, but there are enough little highlight colors in brown from even just very, very small things. Like this, for instance. This is just a little cattle horn piece in brown, a little kind of spike piece in brown here. You've got some little details, even a tongue on the inside of the mouth, that really make those feel like kind of the next layer in terms of mechanical design, where the gold is the barest layer, brown is the next layer, and then you have the dark blue, which is the main color of the armor plating, but then of course you also have the silver and gunmetal gray, where gunmetal gray is used pretty sparingly just on the bottom part of the creature, where if you look at the top, there isn't a ton of gunmetal gray being used, but then when you look at the bottom, it really is clear it is armor plated, where it matters down at the bottom, you have some gunmetal gray plating here. These feet are actually all supposed to be gunmetal gray. The Brickling shipper shipped me two of the wrong color, which is why I put the silver ones on the outside, but for the most part, the gunmetal gray stuff is near the bottom. And then you have a lot of silver armor around the top, and especially when you actually have the head here, the head itself is fully armored up in all silver, which really does feel like kind of an add-on being placed like a crown on top of the head itself. Everything just comes together to really make this feel like a full-on robotic creation, but also make it feel very realistic when it comes to a mechanical dinosaur, or at least as realistic as you can get. So we've talked about posability, we've talked about building techniques, and we've talked about aesthetics. So now I think it's time to bring over some representative samples from the Bionicle universe and talk about the overall look and feel and believability in universe. So let's bring over a sample Gatorian here, Akar, who doesn't even go up to the top of its leg, where you can see right there, that's kind of the scale. And Ranu and Agori here, who I don't think his head even clears the top of the claws. So you can just see how good this looks compared to the other Bionicle creatures. I am also going to bring over something not from the Bionicle universe. People who've played the game may kind of get where I'm going with this, but we'll just put that minifigure there, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But first off, in terms of believability in the Bionicle universe, I am very, very impressed with the way that this is done. That being said, I'm going to be completely honest, this is a very impressive model. It's a very impressive Technic creature. It just doesn't quite feel like a Bionicle model. To me, it's almost too good for a Bionicle, in that the paneling is just so smooth, and it has so much mechanical detail in it that this could potentially exist in the Bionicle world. It's just such on a different level compared to any other Bionicle creation that it's almost too good to actually be considered to be in universe, because we never got anything nearly this good. Most mocks are not this good. It just has so much detail and so much working pistons and articulation and mechanical functions that this honestly feels like a just replica of something that you would see in a video game or pop culture, or maybe something that you would see outside of the Bionicle world, but not quite fitting in with the overall Bionicle aesthetic, because it's just so good. I mean, this is almost counterintuitive, but it just feels over-engineered for a Bionicle model. Still, that being said, I think that it scales pretty nicely against the other characters. It is a little bit large compared to them, which obviously does make a lot of sense. It is a T-Rex-like creature. There's a lot of emphasis being put on these massive legs and the almost comically small arms near the front here, but it somehow makes it work, and I can definitely see this being used, or maybe even being ridden by Glatorian, where it almost feels like a souped-up version of the Fairwind Skirmish set. But the reason I've brought over Aloy here is that if you're not aware, there's a series of video games, Horizon Zero Dawn. I am not a big video gamer, but because LEGO actually made an official set of it, I actually kind of got into playing it. Now, the kind of premise behind the games, if you're not aware, without really any spoilers, a set of humans is living on a future version of Earth that has kind of been overrun by these mechanical creatures. Just look at this. I don't know if I'm seeing some resemblance to some of the creatures there. I mean, you can kind of see that this feels like it fits very much well in the world of Horizon, and kind of having the characters from that world interacting with a creature this large and trying to bring it down. Kind of reminds me of the Thunderjaw from that series. That's why I kind of wanted to bring alongside this character here, where it feels like a lot of the little mechanical detail is almost straight out of a video game. Maybe you have to shoot at the golden points and knock those off before you can get into the main thing. This flipping open feels like something that you can actually kind of knock off of the creature itself. Just altogether, this really does feel like it fits more in the world of gaming or video games than the actual world of Bionicle. And I've noticed a lot of people comment that this actually does look like something from, I believe there's like a Dark Souls enemy or some other creature in some video game that does look like this, so maybe that's where inspiration came from. Altogether though, I'm just very, very impressed overall by the look and feel of the model itself. But with that, I think it's time to sum up my main points on this review, starting off with posability. So posability, you guessed it, is, well, it's not quite a 10 out of 10, but it is a 9 out of 10. The only reason why it is a 9 out of 10 is that when moving it around, as you saw, pieces will fall off. You have the Technic bushings that will just kind of tend to strain on the axles a bit and pop off a little bit. That can obviously be fixed if you just had stronger pieces. I am using the older style of pieces because I just simply ran out of bushings while making this, but you've got some detail there. Of course, you have these gear pieces that do tend to fall off just because of the nature of the mold of the piece itself. But for the most part, articulation, when I first saw digital images of this, I was very, very worried because it was a full digital design. It looked really large. I was like, oh, this is definitely not going to support its own weight, or maybe the legs will flop around, or maybe it's just going to keep falling over. But no, this is not falling over. I mean, this is really sturdy. Let's remove it from touching anything. You can like really mess with it, and this is not gonna fall over. And this is a testament to just how sturdy this is. Like I'm actively like trying to knock it over, and it just will not fall over. That is just so impressive to me that I can literally try to knock over a custom Bionicle creation and it won't fall over. I mean, this is just a feat of engineering, how stable it is, but also how posable it is at the same time. Building techniques, 10 out of 10. Easy, done. Do I need to elaborate more? Probably not. But I will anyway. So you've got the pistons, they all work. You've got the internal detail of the design. You have the gear functions and everything being friction. You have all of the head movement being really satisfying to actually move around. Just, oh my goodness, that is just so satisfying to have him be looking upwards and downwards, kind of watching those pistons move as you turn the head around. Oh my goodness, just so cool. 10 out of 10. If I could give it an 11 out of 10, I would. Overall aesthetics, very good as well. I have no complaints about the color scheme, and I really appreciate how for a model this large, I think the larger that a model is, the harder it is to actually give it a cohesive color scheme with enough highlight colors to avoid it from just looking like a large blob. And this absolutely has those, from the gold highlights in the internal sectors there, from the silver armor plating to the gunmetal bottom armor plating. A lot of work was made in terms of making this feel fully realistic and armored up. So 10 out of 10 aesthetics. Believability in universe, I'm gonna have to give it an 8 out of 10. Again, it is almost too detailed and too good to be compared against other Bionicle characters who kind of look under-armored and under-detailed in comparison. Still, that being said, it scales fantastically against some of the other characters, and let's say if we were able to maybe mount a Glatorian to be riding its back here, I think that would be a really cool look to have someone actually be riding this. And yeah, I guess that kind of works, where you can really kind of mount a character on the top here and really make it a steed for one of the Glatorian itself. So that is a very cool look to see here. And overall, just a very impressive model, one of my favorites from the contest. And I was blown away because I think when I first saw the image of this, there was only one image submitted. It was kind of a side view. It was a bit of a lower res image, and I didn't really make too much of it. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool how big it is. I don't know how that would work in real life. But building this has absolutely given me a much bigger appreciation for the model, and I think that people are going to start realizing just how cool this is by seeing the review, and hopefully this will inspire some of you to create stuff like this, because again, This takes the cake. I think this is probably the most complex and most rewarding model I have ever made out of Lego bricks, at least in the Bionicle category or in the Technic category. So fun to put together, so fun to play with, so fun to move around. Just watch the pistons move as you move the legs. Oh, that is so satisfying to see the movement there of the pistons themselves as you rotate the leg back and forth. Very cool to see all the articulation being used here, and overall I am very pleased with the way this model turned out. Big congratulations to Jax, aka Mock Hub, for putting this behemoth of a mock together, and I will watch your career with great interest, because if this is any indication of the kinds of models that you're putting together, I want to build them all, because this is just so cool. That's all I have to say about this model. Very impressed. Thank you all so much for tuning into Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses, and contests like these coming your way very soon. Thanks so much, and bye for now.